Welcome, data people. We are Zuma. My name is Matt, and this is the Data for Good podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Zuma. Zuma is a dedicated recruitment company focusing on data positions across Berlin. The Data for Good podcast is for the world of data science, analytics, and engineering, giving you a platform to hear the thoughts and opinions of data leaders from Berlin and beyond. Today, we are joined by Vasileios Zografos, Senior ML Engineer at Sender. Vas, welcome. How are you?
Thank you very much, Matt. Thanks for the invitation. I'm fine. I'm very happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. First off, can you give us a brief introduction?
Sure. So, as you said, my name is Vasileios. People prefer to call me Vas for short. I think it's much easier. So my background originally is academic. So I've studied computer vision and machine learning back in the day, before data science was a thing. And I stayed for many years in academia, research, etc. And after a while, I decided, it's time to try industry. I started in industry as a data scientist, and then moved on initially as pricing real estate, so real estate equity.
Yeah.
Then moved on to work for a company in Berlin, determining the probability of default for business loans. And for the last over a year now, a little bit over a year, I've been working with Sennder as a machine learning engineer, senior machine learning engineer, in amongst many things in pricing for the marketplace at Sennder, pricing loads. We will have a chance to discuss a little bit in detail. And I've been doing that, for a bit over a year now at the machine learning team. We call ourselves sennder. Yes, and that's what I've been doing since.
Awesome, and that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. So we're going to talk about machine learning in logistics. So for those who don't know and aren't aware of Sennder, what does Sennder do?
So Sennder is what we call a digital freight forward company, right? So we have a marketplace where, in a very, very simple way, of explanation, shippers and carriers come together. Okay, so shippers are the big companies like Coca-Cola or whatever, and they want to ship products. They want to ship many loads of their products. And then on the other side, you have the carriers. It could be small companies with a few trucks or huge companies with a large fleet. And we have the marketplace that we bring those two players essentially together, and we are pricing the load. Okay, a load is defined as a truckload that goes from A to B. Okay, from an origin to a destination, and this is what Sennder does. Okay, so we're pricing the cost of doing this transaction. So Sennder has been around for a few years. I think since 2017. It's now what is considered a scale up, right? It's already Series D. It has gone through four rounds of funding, right? And it's a player it's a big player in a market that's about 400 billion euros, and we're talking about the European continent. The typical players in that market is DHL, DB Schenker, big names that you heard of, and also Sennder is one of these digital freight forwarder companies. I can give you a little bit about the history. Sennder, as I said, it started initially. It was a very it started there was a lot of analog part of it. So we have the carrier managers. These are the people who basically deal with the carriers. Okay, their customers are basically the carriers, and then we have the AOMs who deal with the shippers. Okay, and this, as you can imagine, logistics is a very analog business.
Yeah.
Okay, it has a lot of bureaucracy, and what Sender is doing now is trying to digitalize this process. Okay, so we're trying to solve this problem of bringing those two parties together and via pricing and other products, using automation, using machine learning.
Awesome. So digitalizing a traditional industry and moving it forward, and using data science, machine learning to do that. And that's the juicy stuff that we're going to get into today. So yeah, the infrastructure, the ML tech stack, good place to start. What's that look like at Sender and Sender AI in particular? Okay, so let me say a little bit about the general infrastructure, because of course it's not only machine learning. There's a larger infrastructure. So we have about 200 to 250 engineers, so the size of the tech team. And this includes like software engineers, the data platform team, so data engineers, etc. And basically the setup of the Sender ecosystem is built around microservices, right? And inside that ecosystem, you have the machine learning engineer team. We call ourselves SenAI, which is responsible for all the products that have to do with machine learning, have to do with prediction, have to do with with using data science. Of course, in the same sort of ecosystem, we have data analytics. We have different teams. A little bit more about SenAI. Currently, I think we are in the latest count. I think we're about 15 people. So it's not a small team. And the team currently is separated into three parts. One part is where I am, which is the pricing. So we are responsible for the pricing product. Another team is responsible for the recommendation system, and I can talk a little bit about that. And the third part is MLOps. So they're responsible for setting up the infrastructure and improving the infrastructure that we're using right now. Having said that, I mean, Sender is a scale-up, is a company that is still growing. And we're always recruiting people, and we're specifically in the tech area and specifically in the SenAI team, we're always looking for talent to expand the team, and we're gonna build two more smaller teams inside the SenAI group. And one of them will be, there's a lot of interesting projects. One is gonna be specifically for causality and experimentation, A/B testing, and all these kind of things. And there are other plans as well, which we can talk about maybe later on. Amazing. And the kind of machine learning, the tech stack that's specific to this domain, what have you chosen? What have you gone for? So
at least for the pricing, I can give you a little bit more information because that's what I'm involved in. So right now, let's talk a little bit about the model. I mean, in terms of the model, we're not using anything super fancy, neural networks or anything like that, LLMs or anything like this. We're just using just gradient boosted trees, which I think is a very common thing in the industry. And for pricing, it works really well. In terms of the tech stack that we have, everything works in the cloud, of course, EC2 runners. I mean, that's very typical in AWS, in the Amazon cloud. In terms of orchestrator, we are using Flight right now to run our experiments, to set up our experiments, etc. And now we're in the process of setting up our MLOps, MLOps architecture, where I can't really tell you too much about, because some of this product we're still sort of negotiating contracts and stuff, so I can't really tell you. But it's basically sort of graphical user interfaces that you can see your experiments. And so it's a proprietary solution. I cannot tell you which one it is right now, but it's one of the major players, right? And yeah, and this is what we use. So we can basically run our experiments. We can see, the performance, the graphs and everything. So, and this is something we're setting up right now. Before, especially when Sender was going from a startup to a scale up, we had a different setup. We had a much more flat, a very typical system that you see in a lot of machine learning teams. Which is local experimentations and running stuff on the cloud using GitLab runners, etc., etc. But now we're moving away from this and into a much more MLOps friendly stack.
Nice. So when it comes to machine learning,
yes,
in logistics, if we focus a bit more time and emphasis on here, on this kind of area, why is it being so groundbreaking for logistics to introduce machine learning?
Absolutely. So logistics is a very, it's a very manual industry, and it's very manual. There is a lot of players. There is a lot of opacity in terms of prices, what costs what in terms of estimation, right? And sometimes, where there is a lot of inefficiencies, there is room for a new player to come in. The way things have been happening so far, and are still happening to a large extent, is some shipper will call a broker, and then they will call a carrier. So it's done by on the phone using handwritten notes, a fax machine. So it's very analog, right? But that's how it works. That's how it works in the whole of the continent. And this gets especially difficult when you have to negotiate prices, and the carriers have drivers from different countries, and it's a very complicated process. So Sender has come along and basically disrupted this domain, this sector, by essentially leveraging machine learning. So what we do is using proprietary data. So we have data since 2017. So when Sender basically started operating, as well as external sources of data, and we're able to predict prices as well as, or sometimes even better than a human carrier manager, so somebody who's going to pick up the phone and negotiate prices. Now, the advantage of that is not so much the accuracy, it's that the fact that you can do it accurately, but also very fast, because this game, this industry, it's also about scaling up. It's also about being able to do this on a large scale. And one of the objectives of Sender is over the next few years, we aim to increase our capacity about 8 to 10 times, to be able to basically sell 10 times more loads than we do now. Okay, and the only way to do that is either hire a lot of people to pick up, to use the phone, or you have to leverage machine learning, and this is what Sender does. So there's a lot of emphasis to build and expand the SenAI team. So that's the focus of Sender right now.
So it sounds like there was a great need for automation and making this a lot smoother and simpler.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Accurate, but also make it able to to price things very, very quickly and at a large scale. And this is something unfortunately people cannot do, just on the phone. And this is just one thing. This is just the pricing. I mentioned that we also have another product, which is the recommendations. So there's a recommendation engine. So there's a separate team inside SenAI that's working on this, which is basically when a carrier logs into our portal, to our marketplace, they can see loads, they get recommended loads that have some, that they're good for their profile. They've done something similar in the past or based on their size, etc., etc. And they can just click on the load, buy the load, essentially bid on the load, and then you just make this automation even better. So it's all this ecosystem around automation in the marketplace that we're trying to build here.
Who does it favor most? Is this benefiting the drivers, SMEs, the enterprise, logistics companies?
So, I mean, it's a little bit. So it's both ways, right? So I mean, you have so Sennder is a B2B company, right? So from one side you have the big shippers that they want to basically transport their products quickly, depending on what products they are. They could be some like food that spoils very quickly, right? Or sometimes they want to have a contract for 1 year. They want to know that their shipments are going to be taken care by, for the full year. On the other hand, you have the carriers, okay, that want to basically, that's what they do. They transport the products. And then you have in the middle, you have sender that is trying to make the whole process more efficient, faster, and transparent. One thing I mentioned before is the market is very opaque. Nobody really knows what something is worth, what something is. I mean, you ask 10 carrier managers for the price of a load, you get 10 different answers. At least with machine learning, you can be certain that that the price that you get is accurate, and you have an explanation, right? Through interpretability, because all these models are interpretable, you can see basically why this price was chosen. So I think this aids into transparency, and transparency also aids in the acceptance of the prices. So when a carrier sees a price and they see why this price was set like that, they understand that this is fair, the value is fair, the price is fair, I'm gonna take this load. And of course, sender, I mean, it makes the margin from this ask and bid spread, basically.
So how does this compare to the data science and machine learning models that are used on airlines that isn't transparent? Because when you get on a plane, the chances are that no two people have paid the same price. How does it compare to that model?
I mean, I don't really know. I mean, the thing is, one thing I have to say is that we don't have carrier specific pricing. So the price that you get is for the load. It doesn't matter if you're a small company or a huge company.
Right.
I think this aids, as I said, in terms of fairness. I think the airline industry is much more dynamic. I wouldn't say it's unfair, but it's much more dynamic, which adjusts based on supply and demand. This is something we might look into in the future when you have a much more dense market, you have more competition, you have a lot of bidding from different carriers. Maybe we look into dynamic pricing. This is certainly an area of development that we have been thinking about. But I think this is what happens in markets which are much more mature, like airline market. Right. You have more players, you have more competition. So if I go and check the price for the same ticket 10 minutes later, it's going to become different because the demand has changed in that time frame.
Interesting. So
yeah, just to say, because you asked me from machine learning, I think from machine learning, that is a much more complicated problem. Not necessarily you need much more complicated models, but you need to also look at things like price elasticity. You have to have an estimate of demand. There is a lot more things going on. The logistics market tends to be a little bit slower in terms of price changes, but it has other effects as well. You have seasonality effects, where there is, for example, the season of fruits that they pick in Spain. It affects prices on loads or holidays, things like that. So it has its own characteristics.
So all these changing factors, and you're putting these into the ML models, there's a huge infrastructure and operational side to all this. So what kind of MLOps is set up? First, if you could just tell us your kind of perspective, and then how Sender tackle it.
I mean, sure, absolutely. So, I mean, MLOps is not just the machine learning part, it's also the data part, and it's also the, when you predict the price, what happens to the price, right? So it's not just the Sen AI team working in isolation. I mean, we have the support from the other teams as well. We have the platform team that is responsible for a lot of the non-Sen AI infrastructure, right? We have the data platform team that's responsible for the ingestion of the data from different sources into Snowflake. So we have and this is the databases that we use in order to get the data for training our models. These are in Snowflake, so we need the support of that team as well. Then when the data comes in our in our infrastructure, basically let's say I'll give you an example. If we want to train a new model, this is done on the cloud. This is using AWS EC2 machines. Obviously, we have selected how our model is going to be trained, and then we set up our training sort of pipeline using Flight. And when the model artifacts are saved on a S3 bucket, of course we're gonna move from S3 now into a model repository, because as I said, we're still setting up the MLOps infrastructure, which is actually a really good time to join the MLOps team. And once we have the artifacts, of course it's a little bit more complicated. We're also using other types of artifacts as well. Then we have our basically our pipelines that run at every 5 minutes or whatever in batch mode, and we're pricing whatever is in the market. These prices, of course, we're using Kafka for this, and those prices are then so they leave let's say our team, okay, and then they go to the rest of the infrastructure. They go to the front end, so a carrier who is logged into our platform can see the prices within 5 minutes since a load is created. They can see the actual price. Our endeavor is to move from a batch mode to be able to do this in real time. Okay, for us to do this, of course, it will mean we have to finalize the MLOps setup. We have to have our API set up, and this is an ongoing process. But as you can see, it's not just a single team. It's a whole it's a whole infrastructure, a whole ecosystem of platform team, data platform team, machine learning engineering team, front end, and we have a different front end, like a different platform for the shippers, a different platform for the carriers. So it's a huge system underneath.
Is this because you're selling the data and the insights as a product, and that's why the investment is being put back into the data teams at Sender?
So at the moment, the data is proprietary. So this is not productionized. We're not selling the data or the insights. We're selling the pricing. So we have the pricing, right, which we calculate and we sell. And of course, the service as well. So in order to have this marketplace, Sender, as I said, makes a margin on every load that is being transported. Maybe in the future, I mean, at the moment, the insights, we keep them for ourselves in order to improve the system, right? But maybe in the future, something can be done in terms of productionizing the data and the insights from that as well.
So how do you see the kind of future of machine learning in logistics and in Sen AI in particular?
I think the future is machine learning. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think already in US, which is a much bigger market compared to Europe, a much more mature market, many more mature players. Yeah, I mean, you have Uber, for example, Uber Freight. I mean, like this kind of companies. I mean, and the data, of course, the data quality is much better. It's much longer history of data. But those kind of markets, logistic markets, they're basically they are run by machine learning. They're automated. I think the same is going to happen in Europe. I hope Sender is the one to sort of to determine the future of the market. I think there's also other big players as well, but I really don't see the traditional model of people picking up phones, having fax machines, and this doesn't scale up, right? It is really all about automation. It's all about dynamic pricing. It's all about scaling up. So I think in that respect, Sender is at a good place.
Yeah,
it's quite a bit of history in this. I would say it's getting to be a mature player now in terms of infrastructure, in terms of data. Especially for the SenAI team, as I said, we're always looking to grow, because also the machine learning engineering is a priority for the company. So they're really trying to grow the business, the digital business. They're really trying to grow the SenAI team. And as I said, there are other products that we're going to start looking into. That means we need additional teams, additional sub teams in SenAI. So one of these products is basically the network optimization. So now we have imagine the logistics network in Europe is a big network that at the moment is not really optimized. And what I mean by that is, you go from A to B and then you have to come back, right? But what if a carrier could go from A to B and then on the way back pick up another load? So this is like an optimization problem.
Yeah.
Or how we can make the whole process much more efficient, get better prices, make sure that there's no empty miles, as we call them. So these are miles that you drive without any load, that nobody's making money. And this is something we're gonna start looking into. And this is called, from our side, it's called bundling. So this is basically go from A to B to C to D and come back, and then have loads that you can pick up along the way. And this is already priced. The whole bundle is priced together, and then the carrier knows that they can get a really good deal by doing a round trip. Right now, this is not something that I don't think anybody's doing. It's a new way, an extra way to add more efficiency to the system.
And this is also not just a sender product. This is going to change the logistics industry in Europe.
I believe so. I think this is something that will resonate well beyond sender. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes in this kind of market it's whoever does this first, and whoever does it correctly is the one who's going to get all the business. And as I said, I think sender's at the right place at the right time for this.
So get it right first time, it sounds like you're saying.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to say a little bit about the team, because I think this might interest some people that are listening to this podcast, is that the team is relatively new. As I said, I've been here 1 year and something. But the team has a lot of experience. So we have a lot of senior machine learning engineers, staff level engineers. We have people who, although they are new to the team, they have many years of experience in terms of academic, engineering, industry, architectural, MLOps architecture. So it's a good team for somebody who wants to learn, but also for somebody who who has some experience and wants to hit the ground running, let's say. So he wants somebody who, he or she, wants to join the team and start putting things together. right? I think the team has the necessary experience and capacity to, to put all this, building blocks together.
Awesome. Sounds like a
Mhm.
great team to be a part of
Yeah,
and a great time as well. I'm
of
conscious of
course.
time, so I
Mhm.
want to finish on one point.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future for not just Sender, but the logistics industry and what machine learning can do? What are we aiming for? What's the Valhalla?
Well, I mean, it's interesting times. I mean, I think, there's a lot of let's say noise about generative models now. I'm sure you have heard it from from interviewing other people as well. And yes, those things have their place also in logistics. I mean, especially one thing I didn't really talk about is the quality of the data, and every machine learning based, and every digital company has issues with data, especially when you have to interact with industry which is very manual. Like still
Yeah.
people, we have like free text. We have data with free text. It's very difficult to parse. I think like LLMs, so models that process text would be very useful for us.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think the next few steps is about scaling up. It's about automation. I think that's the real big thing. It's not like, I don't think in terms of logistics that you can solve every problem with things like ChatGPT, etc. Having said
Yeah.
that, we're also looking at ways of using these models, but for productivity. So for, let's say, generating some code, generating unit tests, making our, still keeping, of course, data scientists and machine learning engineers in the loop,
Yeah.
but making them more productive. So we are also one of those companies that starts to look into generative models like this for processing our data and for making our our work much more efficient. But I don't think just by using this kind of models, just by using this kind of tools, that you can solve the logistics problem. I think this is about accuracy, about being fast, like getting the prices quickly, about recommendation engines recommending like good things, and just scaling this up. And that's also an infrastructure problem. It's not
Yeah.
just a model problem.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's
Mhm.
a tool to be used, but not to
Mhm.
be relied on.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, that's all we have time for, unfortunately, today. Thank you very much for your time and your rich insights, Vas.
Thanks very much, Matt. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. And to the listeners, yeah, drop any feedback in the comment section. Don't forget to like and share so we can reach as many people as possible. But it is bye from us. Thanks once again, Vas.
Thank you.
Ciao for now.
Bye.